morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason with Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone today with my friend Neale Donald Walsch. Hi, Neale.
Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you again.
Yes. So I was just reminiscing with you that it was 2010. I had to go back and look at my picture. Oh, no, 2011 that we were together in Portugal. And I think that same year, 2012, we were together in Chicago at Celebrate Your Life.
Yes, but you promised me we would never mention these various trysts to people out loud, and just share it with everybody in the
no,
world.
Em knows all about it. In fact, she was in some of the pictures, so we're okay.
Okay.
Em knows all about me. Yeah.
Okay.
We're good. Well, anyway, you're so funny. So you have written 39 books all about your mystical experiences and put them into layman's terms so everyone can have their own personal experience with God. Why did you feel like you needed a new book called The God Solution?
Because I saw that the world was yearning for a simple, direct, almost one sentence answer to its problems, to the world's problems. And while I do believe that the messages in the Conversations with God books, there are 9 dialogue books, can be world-changing,
Yes.
I also began to sense a need, especially in these past 2 years, with all that's been going on, not just the pandemic, but the racial challenges we're facing, racial inequalities all over the world, not just in one country, with the economic impact that we've been seeing around the world, with all that's really happening. I've been sensing a sense of urgency among people. Could somebody just give us an answer, a way we could change, our experience of life on Earth in a sentence or two without me having to read 39 books or some long treatise, or there must be something that I can just grasp and go with. And so I said, I thought to myself, yes, that is true. There is something. And I thought I would put that into a simple book, which I called The God Solution. The God Solution is not a dialogue book. It's not a dialogue with God, but it's a very brief narrative. It can be read, really easily read in an afternoon. It's a very thin book, but it does offer some powerful insights and a single solution to the challenges that we're facing on the earth today. Kathy, would you allow me to take a minute to share with you what I think is the challenge itself?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm often asked, what is the biggest problem in the world today? And the biggest problem in the world today, as I see it, Kathy, is that nobody knows what the biggest problem in the world today is. That is, the people who are in positions of power, the people who are in places where they could really do something about it. Spiritual leaders like the Pope, the chief ulama, a head rabbi, political leaders like presidents and prime ministers of countries, economic leaders like the chairmen of the board and the owners of major multinational corporations and so forth. People in who I call COIs, which is a military term for centers of influence. Mm-hmm. The centers of influence in the world simply don't seem to have an idea of what the biggest problem in the world today is. They can see the outcome. They certainly see the fallout, but they don't seem to know what's causing it. The fallout, we can all see. I can put the fallout, the outcome of those problems, in one word: alienation.
Right.
Kathy, I've never seen a level of alienation on the planet that I'm seeing this time in my life. And I'm a pretty old guy, but I've lived a long time, but I've not seen tons of alienation at this level, where people of differing economic strata, differing skin colors, differing religious ideas, differing political notions, differing nations, anything that's different. If a person isn't part of our tribe, of our group, then they're the problem.
Right.
They're the issue. And we're seeing alienation between people, such as I've never seen before on the planet. And the sad part about it is, the irony is, this is all happening just at the time when we desperately need, as a civilization, exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
Not alienation, but in fact, some sense of coming together to solve the world's problems as, as a collective. So I decided that we needed to describe this problem and then to offer a solution. The problem in the world today is also able to be put into one word: separation.
Perfect. Mhm.
Kathy, humanity, in my observation, has bought into, hugely embraced an idea of separation.
Mhm.
That is, we are all separate from everything else. We're living separate individual lives. We're separate from each other. We're separate from our environment, from our planet, from our earth. I mean, the earth is our dominion. We have dominion over it, but we're separate from it. We're not one with it. And of course, we're separate. If, for those of us who do believe there is a God, we're separate from God. And by the way, speaking of those of us who do believe there is a God, surveys have shown, and in recent years, sociologists have taken surveys over the past 5 years in all the countries of the world, asking a simple question: do you believe in a higher power? And 8 out of 10 people say yes. 8 out of 10 people believe in some sort of higher power. But what's interesting is, while we can all agree that there's a higher power, we can't agree on what it is, what it wants, what it requires, what it demands, and what it does if we don't meet its demands. We can't seem to agree on that, which is why we have right now on the planet, you may not believe this, but by actual count, 4,323 religions
Wow.
on the face of the earth, on this state. I didn't make that number up. You can Google it. It's part of the data gathering of the Google enterprise. Over 4,000 religions on the face of the earth right now, because we can't seem to agree on who and what God is, what God wants, all those things I mentioned a minute ago. Now, that might seem like, oh, it's an interesting statistic, but really, how important is it? Except that humanity creates its ethics, its moral ethics, its, I want to say, its political ethics, its economic ethics, its social ethics, and its spiritual ethics. Our whole ethical infrastructure is based on our faith, our religion, what we believe about God. And since 8 out of 10 of us believe that there is a higher power, this is not a small factor
Wow.
in why life is the way it is. So here's the challenge. What most people believe about God, not all of us, but the largest number of us, without a doubt, what the largest number of us who believe in God believe about God is that God is judging, condemning, and punishing. God loves us, but a form of God's love, like a stern parent, is to judge us when we do what our particular religion, now mind you, there are over 4,000 of them, but when we do what our particular religion says is wrong or not okay, and for some religions, it even gets down to what we wear. I mean, the clothes we have on, or what we eat on Fridays, or what we're allowed to say, or what we're allowed to think. So most of the world's religions tell us that God is loving, but that God will judge us, condemn us, and punish us if we don't do what God wants. And those punishments are not insignificant. I want to share with you a little anecdote, if I can, from my childhood. I was born and raised in a Roman Catholic family. I'm not here to be a Catholic basher, because I received great insights and wonderful wisdom from my upbringing in that particular religion.
Mhm.
But when I was 9 years old, the priest would come into our class and teach once a week, because I went to a parochial school, and the priest would come in and teach once a week what he called catechism, which is the doctrine and the dogma of the Roman Catholic Church. On this particular Wednesday, he came into the classroom and he said, about Mass on Sunday, children, you need to go to Mass every Sunday. And if you miss Mass on Sunday without a good excuse, I mean, if you're caring for a sick parent or you have to work, fair enough. But if you don't have a good excuse, like you just decided to go play golf or to just go to the playground with the other kids, if you miss mass on Sunday without a good excuse, and if, God forbid, you should get hit by a car on Monday and die on Tuesday, you'll be in hell. You'll be in hell experiencing everlasting damnation, because missing Mass is considered by the Catholic Church what is known in its vernacular as a mortal sin.
Wow.
Not a venial sin, not a small sin, like maybe cursing or disobeying your parents, on a small thing, but in fact, a mortal sin. That is a sin that earns you everlasting damnation in hell because you missed church on Sunday without a good excuse. That's how the church drew people to its pews. Fear, absolute fear. Oh my God, we don't have a choice about this. We've got to go to church or God will send us to hell if we die from the COVID virus or whatever else is going on. We got to make sure we go to church every Sunday. And the Catholic Church, forgive me, is not the only church that has used fear of God as a means of compliance with human dictates and human decisions and human choices that we say are coming from God. Now, having laid that groundwork, the God solution suggests something quite revolutionary. People will have to hold their breath because they're not going to be able to easily believe this. The God solution says that what we need on the planet right now, in one simple sentence, is to change our definition of God and to come up with a two-word definition of God upon which every religion on the earth could agree. And the sentence is, the definition is God, pure love. Now, Kathy, when I share this information with people in lectures and speeches that I offer, somebody in the back of the room inevitably gets up and says, "Oh, Neale, I've been listening to you now for minutes on end. Are you telling me you came here to tell us that God is love?" We all know that. Even all those religions you talk about, everybody agrees that God is love. Nobody doesn't agree with that. And I have to say to them, hold your horses, hold it. You didn't hear me say God is love. I said God is pure love. That's a particular brand of love. Now the person in the back of the room might say, all right, what's the difference? And the difference is that pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. Now, this is theologically revolutionary, Kathy. Can we believe in a God that needs, requires, demands, and expects nothing in return from us, that doesn't even require us to believe in God? Can we imagine an entity so magnificent, so glorious, so needless, so powerful, and so filled with love, that is in fact love itself, that it asks nothing of us and requires nothing of us, but simply desires to give to us all the power that we need to create our own experience of who we are and how life is going to be? That's revolutionary.
Yes.
That's theologically revolutionary.
Okay, so I want to ask, is pure love the same as unconditional love?
Yes.
Okay.
There are no conditions.
Yes. So I am lucky. I'm a volunteer for IANS, which is International Association for Near-Death Studies. And so many of these people that have had near-death experiences come back and say, oh, well, there was no judgment. It was like, I went to the next step. I was bathed in loving light. And so what you're providing is a way to have that now without having to wait till you pass, or
without having a near-death experience.
Yeah, or even a spiritually transformative experience will probably get you to the same place. it's a mystical connection with who and what you really are, rather than the connections that we've been conditioned with, which were to create obedience.
Well, that's the next step in the process. The next step in the revolution, Kathy, is the first step is to see if we can embrace the notion of a God who needs, expects, demands, and requires nothing from us. The second step in that revolution is to embrace the notion that we and God are not separate from each other, that the whole idea of separation is a mistake, a falsity. It's a falsehood. It's an error. It's not meant, it was never meant, to be damaging to us. It's a simple error. We're a very young species. We simply have not understood, nor have we fully embraced the idea that we are all one, that everything is one. In fact, one of the first sentences in book 1 of 3,000 pages of Conversations with God dialogue tells us this: all things are one thing. There is only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. So that means that I am an individuation of God, that you and all of us are individuations of the divine. That separation is an illusion. Now, if we thought that separation was an illusion, that you and I are one, it would change our moral, our ethical idea, our whole foundation of how to interact politically, economically, socially, spiritually. We wouldn't suddenly decide that blustering and bullying verbally and physically bullying people was our idea of leadership. Just to use one example. We wouldn't decide in the world of business that, the guy with the most marbles at the end of the game wins. We wouldn't think that it was okay for 8 human beings to hold or control more wealth and resources on the planet than half the population combined. We would immediately see the obscenity of that. Not to make those 8 people wrong, truly to make the other billions of people, like asleep, wake up. Is this really the world that you want to create? A world in which 653 of our children die of starvation every hour? I didn't say every week. I didn't say every year. I didn't say every day. I said every hour.
Wow.
653 children. Check the statistics. I'm not making these numbers up. You can find this information online. 653 children die of starvation every hour, while we throw away more food as leftovers in the restaurants of Morocco and Paris and London and Los Angeles than we would need to feed an entire village in the third world for a week.
Wow.
How can we not see the obscenity of that?
Well,
how do we not see the obscenity of 1.5 billion people living their entire lives without one drop of clean water? Without one drop of pure water. Now, people might say, oh, Neale, you're making much ado about nothing. It's a simple inconvenience. Really? The lack of pure water creates thousands of unnecessary health complications and deaths every year on this planet.
Right.
So, guys, what would it take for us to snap out of it and decide we can do better? Surely we can do better. There must be a solution to the way the world is now being experienced and the way it's creating itself. And there is a solution. It's called the God solution. And the God solution is to create a new ethical infrastructure for business, industry, economics, social interactions, and our spiritual realities. And that new ethic would inform our actions and our decisions. And we would never allow ourselves to create a world in which 8 out of 10 people in the world go to bed hungry every night. What are we doing to ourselves?
Right. Well, that's what I tend to think that this CB period, it was kind of a design to wake us up. that this whole opportunity to have a pause and to really
Yeah, I want to
experience.
interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, Kathy.
Okay.
Forgive me, because I want to make it clear that there is no design in the sense of God's plan.
Okay.
God is not up there going, let's see how I can solve this problem on Earth. I mean,
Okay,
there are billions of planets in the solar system, but on Earth, let me see what I no, because I'm a pretty big guy. I could handle billions of planets, but it's not God's job to design plans, to put into place events that could cause certain outcomes. God's desire is, in fact, just the opposite, not to cause events, but to cause us to have the power to create the events and the responses to the events that we choose. That is, God's desire is to make us the creators of our own reality, not for God to create the reality that she wants for us. That would mean that we're not we're just minions. We're just servants down here that have to listen to what God wants us to do and then just follow instructions, avoid excessive use, and then and then go ahead and obey the commandments, and then God will fix everything. God's job is not to fix everything, and God has not created a plan. So what's going on here is not a plan. It is simply the result of decisions that our society, our culture has made. But it has produced the exact outcome you're talking about. It has done that, which is an opportunity. It has produced an opportunity for us to decide again who we are and who we choose to be and how we choose to experience life as we move forward, and what kind of life do we choose to bequeath to our children and to their children? Are we going to leave them a magnificent gift, or are we going to leave them an unimaginable burden?
Okay, so when you look at the great leaders that you can remember in history, like Nelson Mandela and let's see, who else? Gandhi. There's so many leaders that showed us a path to forgiveness and to heal our differences and to not project um, our thoughts onto others. Why do you think that hasn't gotten any momentum?
Because we don't understand the fundamental basis of ultimate reality. For instance, just as one example, Conversations with God tells us something also quite extraordinary. Get a load of this. Conversations with God says, forgiveness is the biggest obstacle to spiritual growth.
Yes, beautiful.
Now, people say, what? What are you talking about? Kathy Mason herself just said forgiveness 2 sentences ago. You mean Kathy doesn't even understand this? Forgiveness is not part of the answer.
I understand.
Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
Yes.
So long as we think we have to forgive others and forgive ourselves for everything we've done, we'll forgive them, and then they'll just go on and we'll go on making the same mistakes over and over again. But when we understand how it was possible for them and us to do the things that we've done in our life, suddenly that understanding opens the door to the big, what I call the big aha. Aha, I see the problem. No more can it be said that most people in the world don't understand the biggest problem in the world today. I see the problem. I see how it's possible for people to have behaved the way they behaved, for people to have said what they said, done what they've done, acted the way they've acted. I'm seeing how that could have occurred. I can forgive it, which just writes it off and allows them to go ahead and do it again, which is, by the way, what's been going on all throughout human history. We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result.
That's insanity. Yep. Okay, so I got a question for you, because, well, again, I want to repeat that understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. And that's what hopefully we are all on our way to a higher mastery. And thank you so much for all of your work. I have a few of your books right here, and I've read almost everything. But it's probably time to go back and read it again, because I'm in such a different place than I was when I first read it. I wanted to ask you about in chapter 5 of your new book. Em asked you a question. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Well, I don't have the book memorized by
Okay,
chapter
so
and
okay.
verse.
She said, what if each of us could create our own religion?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, I was in the middle of writing the book, and you're right. My lovely wife came into the room because, of course, we talked about, what I was writing, and we had discussions about it. And she said to me, I just thought of something. What if everybody on the planet could create their own religion? And what if everybody on the planet had to follow the religion they created? What do you think they might say that their religion would teach?
Wow.
And I looked out the window for a full 10 minutes. I thought, what a table turning over idea. That turns over the tables. Oh my God. So I started asking people. I know it's a ridiculous question. This couldn't possibly happen. But if, just hypothetically, you could create the world's religion and everybody had to believe, everybody was required to believe in your religion, what would you teach? Wow. You want to talk about a question for the next cocktail party? There it is. The next dinner party that you throw, put that question on the table and see where the evening goes.
Wow.
What would your religion teach? Would it teach that, I'm sorry, we can't sell you a wedding cake because you're both of the same sex.
I know, just how ridiculous.
Would it teach, I'm sorry, we're going to have to run 23,000 volts of electricity through your body while you sit here in the electric chair because you killed someone else. And we got to teach people that killing other people is not okay. So to teach people that killing other people is not okay, we're going to kill you. We're going to use the energy that created the problem to solve the problem. We're going to use terror to solve terror, anger to bring an end to anger, killing to bring an end to killing, and we're going to fail to see the contradiction. How's that for a first principle of our new religion? Principle number 1, fail to see the contradiction of your own actions and decisions. Principle number 1 of your new religion. Or maybe we should throw that one out.
Of course.
And maybe we should have a different idea of what religion could share with us. Maybe we could reduce religion to a single sentence. God is pure love, and you are an individuation of God. And then we could invite our businesses, our industries, our religions, our social constructions. We could invite every way we group together to adopt that as its foundational ethic.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an interesting idea. So I would invite all of your viewers and listeners to just consider this question, just as an interesting mental exercise. If you could start your own religion and you knew that everyone in the world were required to heed the principles and teachings of your religion, what would your religion say?
Mm.
What would it say about marriage, about sexuality, about parenting, about economics, about ethics, about morals? What would it say about simple things, diet? What would it say? Just what would your religion teach?
Wow.
What an interesting question that my wife asked. And so I put in the book my answer as part of the God solution. Not that I think that my answer is the right answer. I want people to understand clearly. It was simply an hypothesis. I said, okay, here's one hypothesis. Here's mine. What's yours? And I invited people to tell us what their hypothesis might be. But hypothetically speaking, here were some of the answers that I offered. We, of course, would never say to a couple, we can't let you rent an apartment from us, and we can't let you have a wedding cake because You love each other, but you're the same gender. You're the same sex. And Guyon says that's not okay. And you're going to hell because you loved a person of the wrong gender.
Yeah. No. Well, I think so much of all of those rules were a power play. They were they may have, some of the dietary rules originally back in ancient times may have been for safety reasons, but then the time the ancients, well, there's so many different ways to interpret all of it. You interpret the Old Testament, and that's an angry, fearful God. He gets mad, he kills everybody over and over again in the Old Testament. And that's not the loving God that you've had the experience with. That's not the loving God that most people that have mystical experiences.
What we need, my dear Kathy, is a civil rights movement for the soul.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Freeing humanity at last from the oppression of its beliefs in a violent, angry, and vindictive God.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, let's do it. Want to march? We could. That's cool. That is really cool. You got another gem. You just are amazing. You're like a diamond miner. You come up with these incredible things. Okay, so I've got another question for you. Or it's actually, I'd love for you to elaborate on it. You talk about in your book about becoming an idea hero. And I love that because you are an idea hero. You have been working with ways for people to understand their relationship in the universe for 39 books. So could you talk a little bit about what an idea hero is and
Sure, let me give you
how
some
we could be
examples.
one?
Sure, let me give you
Okay,
some examples.
thank you.
Galileo was an idea hero. He said in 1603 that the earth revolved around the sun. And he was condemned by the Catholic Church and sent to prison. He was placed under house arrest and could not leave his house. He died under house arrest because the Catholic Church demanded that he denounce the idea that the earth revolved around the sun, because the church taught that, no, you don't understand. Human beings are God's greatest creation. We are God's ultimate creation in the universe, and the universe therefore revolves around us and around our planet. So the sun revolves around the earth. And they demanded that Galileo recant his idea. He died under house arrest. He was an idea hero. It only took the Catholic Church, I think, 350 years to come to its senses and to say, actually, as it turns out, Galileo was right. And so we rescind our condemnation of him. And, we were wrong and he was right. Ignaz Semmelweis was an idea hero. He said in 1844, he's a doctor. He was a doctor in Hungary. And he said in 1844, you know what? We could probably reduce infant mortality in the local hospital here. He was noticing that the hospital in which he worked, they had an extraordinary number of babies, infants who were dying, many at childbirth. And he finally decided, what if we decided to cleanse our hands with a sterilizing liquid between procedures? Because he noticed that the doctors were going from the morgue to the birthing room without using a sterilizing. They were washing their hands, but they weren't using any sterilization because doctors didn't believe in germs. And they told poor Dr. Semmelweis that he was crazy. What are you, crazy? And they drove him out of the medical profession. It took 50 years, which is a lot better than 350 years, but it took 50 years for the medical profession to come to its senses and to say, you know what? poor Semmelweis, who died in a mental institution thinking that he was crazy, was right. There are things called germs. And he's now known as the father of sterilization. And I'll give you one other example.
Mhm.
Barbara McClintock is an idea hero. She said a few years ago, 30 or 40 years ago, she said, I have discovered something called jumping genes. She's a geneticist.
Uh-huh.
And as a geneticist, she was working in that area. And she said, I've discovered why there are inconsistencies in hereditary characteristics from one generation to another of plants and of people. She called them jumping genes. They told her she was crazy. They told her, no, I was like, that's just called junk DNA. It's not really what you say it is. You're wrong. And they insisted in the medical profession that she was wrong until 1983, when she won the Pulitzer Prize in physiology and medicine, because it turned out we came to our senses. So an idea hero is someone who puts forth a notion and lives into that notion, steps into it with commitment and demonstration, puts forth an idea that she or he knows ahead of time that most people are going to disagree with, that most people are going to think is totally crazy and absolutely wrong, but stick to that idea anyway, knowing that the time will come when we will come to our senses and we will say, you know what? That was a right idea. That was a correct idea. That was accurate. And we were mistaken all this time. So what I'm inviting in the book, The God Solution, is for all of us to become idea heroes, to say and to live into the living of the notion that God is not judging, condemning, and punishing. And we no longer need to use that model as the basis for our own interactive behaviors with each other. Because right now we're using our idea of God as justification for acting in the same way with each other. We are judging, condemning, and punishing with each other.
Right.
In various degrees at various levels, but inevitably, when there's a disagreement between people, we encounter judgment, condemnation, and some level of punishment. And the punishment could be the electric chair, which is why we have a movement in the United States and around the world to try to at least end the death penalty, because the numbers of people who have been put to death and then found later to have been totally innocent is increasing every year, until even the legal profession has to say, you know what, this is crazy.
Yeah.
We're putting people to death and then discovering 20 years later, because of new DNA evidence or whatever, that they were utterly and completely innocent, which they have been trying to tell us, screaming their innocence even as they're walking to the electric chair. Come on, people, is this a civilization?
Right.
Are we really an advanced civilization? When is it time? When are we ready to wake up?
Okay, I have another question for you. In my experience, I am still watching how some people they have their own egoic presentation on subjects. For instance,
Are you referring
about-
to me?
no.
You could have been.
No. Okay, so
your audience is saying, oh, like Neale.
No, sorry. No, sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just having fun with you.
What I'm referring to is I helped a group of people. I just went as a volunteer, which I do, down to a church in Denver with Jonathan Ellerby. And he's a Hay House author, really great guy. And he, maybe 6 years ago, he had a group of heads of different religious bodies together to do an event about the climate change. And the egos in that room, they treated me terribly. I mean, here I was a volunteer videoing them and everything, but it was, I haven't talked to the Pope, but it felt like they thought they were that important. And I've watched some of these people. I see them now, they're better after COVID, after this pause, but I'm still seeing how do you, that self-importance or that righteous behavior, that leadership model. Do you have a suggestion for that? Because that in conscious business, most of the people in our audience are working on whatever they can do to be there as love for their customers and their employees. And a lot of times I feel that what I'm doing is giving them resources of ways that they can nurture themselves, like knowing about all your books and especially this new book. But I'm looking at these egoic representations of, hey, yeah, I want to play the game, but I'm playing my game version. Any suggestions on that?
I don't know that it's necessary for us to abandon our own individual game, just to use your turn of phrase.
Okay.
I don't know that we need to step away from, what feels fundamentally true for us. It's not a question so much as what we believe as it is how we put it into the world. Exactly. In our actions. A wonderful spiritual master said to me years ago, speak your truth, but soothe your words with peace.
Beautiful.
And I have remembered that from the day he said it. He's no longer with us in physical form, but I have always remembered that wonderful lesson. Speak your truth, but soothe your words with peace. So I think the answer is for us to, first of all, get in touch with ego. Ego is an acronym. It's an abbreviation, edging God out.
Oh, perfect.
And so I think what we want to do is not edge God out. But ego is a good thing if we don't edge God out with it. Ego has gotten a bad rap. Ego is that part of us that allows us to see that we are other than, not separate from, but other than those who join us on this journey here on earth. Even as my fingers are other than each other. My thumb is other than my little finger. All my fingers are different, but they are still part of the same body. So they're different and other than, but not separate from the hand or the body that supports it. We are likewise the same as the body of God, simply other than the other elements of the body of God. So how we can, I think, end the behaviors that you're referring to of arrogance and power plays and actual cruelty in some cases between people, either in business or even in their personal lives, right, is to really reconfigure the way we see the world, who we are in relationship to the rest of the world. Who am I in relationship to you? And for that matter, why am I here? There are 4 fundamental questions that I would invite every business leader, and for that matter, every person on the planet, to ask themselves. But imagine applying these questions to your business. Number 1, who am I? Or in the case of a business, who are we? Number 2, where are we? Number 3, why are we where we are? And number 4, what do we intend to do about that? The 4 fundamental questions of life. If we can ask ourselves these questions and provide ourselves with the highest possible answer that we can imagine, I think we would set the course of our business life and our personal life, for that matter, on a new path, the most marvelous path we could have imagined, the likes of which we might never have thought of even just a few years ago. See, people have to ask themselves, Kathy, it seems to me, a really fundamental question with regard to themselves personally. Who am I really? Am I simply a physical entity, I'm a physical being, I can feel my hand.
No.
I'm no different from a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea. I'm a physical entity.
No.
I'm born, I live, I die. That's it. Or is it possible, just possible, that I'm more than that? Is it possible that I'm actually a spiritual being, having a body and a mind, but that I'm not my body and I'm not my mind? I'm a spiritual entity with a body and a mind at this particular time in my life experience. Is it possible that I'm a spiritual entity that always was, is now, and always will be? Is it possible that I am what some religions, what some faith traditions have called a soul, a spiritual entity? And if that's possible in your reality, if you think that you're more than just a physical entity, then you needs must ask yourself a logical question. What am I doing here? If I'm truly a spiritual entity,
Mhm.
why would I place myself in this particular location
Yes.
in the universe? There must be something I don't fully understand here, the understanding of which would change everything.
Perfect.
And once we dig deep enough, we find what that understanding is, and it changes not just the way we do business, but the way we do the business of life.
Mm.
It gives us a whole new, as the French would say, raison d'etre, a whole new reason for being. And we discover that we are not human doings. We are, in fact, human beings.
Mm.
And then we shift the basis of our whole approach to our everyday activities. What am I choosing to be now? I offer people a little tool that they could use to assist them in staying on track with some of these interesting ideas. And some of these ideas are for a few people, a little bit out of touch. I mean, they feel like they're way up here. People have described me as, and my ideas as airy-fairy. Neale, excuse me, you're a nice guy, but you're a little airy-fairy. So I like to say to them, okay, that's fair enough. If you feel that way, I don't need to convince you of otherwise. But I'm going to give you a tool that you might find useful, even for a person who's not airy-fairy.
Okay.
So here's the tool. The first time you see anybody in any given day of your life, maybe it's the person across the pillow, maybe it's the person across the kitchen, maybe it's the person across the street, maybe it's the person across town, maybe it's the person across the world. But the first time in any given day that you see that person, say to yourself, think to yourself, don't say it out loud. You say it out loud, you will not be understood, and you may be marginalized, and you may even be injured. So keep the thought to yourself. But think to yourself, the first time you see that person, I have come that you may have life, and that you may have it more abundantly. Your life will be made better today for my having walked through it. I promise you.
Beautiful. Wow, that what a beautiful discipline.
And if every business owner said that about their business, we have been created. I created this business that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Your life will be made better today because we exist. I promise you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I got another thing for you. Barbara Marx Hubbard, who we're both fans of, said that we're evolving to this new species of human, which she called Homo universalis. And that human was the concept was that there would be telepathy and all sorts of other superpowers, which are more what I consider godlike, would be available to us. Do you feel that your book, The God Solution, is part of the path to get to that new human?
Yes. Barbara was more than just somebody that I was admiring of. We were close personal friends.
Yes.
We worked closely together on a personal basis. And I'm happy to say that I had played a larger role in her life. I wrote her biography.
I know I've got it right here. Do you want me to show it?
That doesn't matter, but the point is, I want people to understand that I knew her extremely well.
Yeah.
And I was more than simply a fan of hers. I was a colleague and a I want to say a co-conspirator. And she was a brilliant, brilliant human being.
Incredible.
Extraordinarily brilliant. You know, 2 sentences out of her mouth, would stop you cold in your tracks and make you think for an hour.
Yep.
So I had the pleasure of writing her biography, and we sat down for 5 days together. I videotaped the whole 5 days, 8 hours a day for 5 days,
Wow.
and threw every question at her I could think of. And that's how I came to write her.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Her biography, and her biography is written in reverse. Most people write biographies, they were born, they lived, they did this, they did that, then they died. I wrote the biography in reverse. It was published, of course, before she left the planet.
Right.
But I wrote it in reverse. I started with the present day and wrote it backward, so that the last chapter is about her early youth and the time of her birth. So I flipped the whole process because I wanted people to know what had resulted from all that she had been and done in her life, and then to go backward and see, how did that come to pass? How did that ever happen? How did she ever get to be in that particular place? Right. So we wrote the book backward, and it's a interesting way to journey through a book.
Yeah, well, I think what she demonstrates and what you demonstrate to everyone here in the audience and to me is the fearlessness of being that idea hero. I mean,
was she ever an idea hero or what? She said stuff that nobody ever even dreamt of verbalizing, much less actually doing.
Well, I mean, if you look at her presentation at the Democratic Convention in 1984, I think it was.
When she called for a female vice presidential candidate. And here we are today, 25 years later.
Yeah. Well, she also called for a peace room.
Yes.
Yeah, and she did. The UN does have that. So basically, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll be glad to put some links in below if you want to learn more about that. But what we're talking about is that there have been Buckminster Fuller. There's a bunch of people that have seen the world in its possible rendition, not maybe the manifestation that we have right now, but the possibility for humanity to wake up and be the love.
Jean Houston is another.
Yeah, Jean. Yes.
Falls exactly into that category.
Yes. Well, and the enlightened ones, actually, the ones that somehow it's almost like a think tank for the future, the possible future. And that's what I feel like this book is part of that legacy, Neale. And that's why I want to thank you so much for writing it, The God Solution, because I really think that that's what we're talking about, is a possibility to come back to center, come back to really the genius of why we're here and what we are here to do, and stop projecting everything on everyone else and do the inner work that it requires to clean this up.
Let me offer this additional piece of information. The book, The God Solution, is not just a running narrative of thoughts about how we could clean up the mess that has been created here. The second half of the book is written in two parts.
Right.
Part two of the book is actually a short course in metaphysics. It talks about the mechanics of manifestation, and it gives actual instruction in how we can use metaphysical principles to produce the outcomes that we say we are all yearning for. So the first half of the book is an hypothesis, a proposal, ideas, huge revolutionary thoughts about how life could be created on our planet if we chose to embrace a whole new set of ideas. There's God calling right there. Hi, I'm doing the best I can. No, she said, well, okay, I got it, thanks. So he said, wrap it up. So the first half of the book is a narrative all about, what we could do and new thoughts we could embrace and revolutionary ideas. And the second half of the book is, as I said, a handbook on how to apply these principles of metaphysics. It's a handbook on applied metaphysics and a teaching narrative on how we can use the power that God has given all of us to create the reality for which we yearn. That's why I call the book The God Solution. It doesn't offer just ideas, it offers actual methods with which we can apply those ideas in day-to-day life.
Well, thank you, Neale. Thank you. I have read it. I will read it again. And I think that the opportunity now is for people to really take a stand for themselves being idea heroes. When they get inspired, rather than worrying about what other people think, is share your brilliance. That's the gift. That's the opportunity, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that failure to do that could maybe be one of the reasons why in the past we have not had the kind of life that we collectively yearn for on this planet. So this is the moment when that kind of interaction with ourselves and with the world at large, the kind you've just described, is called for. As some people have been known to say, if not now, when? If not you, who?
Perfect.
And that's something for us to go to sleep with. If not now, when? And if not you, who?
Great. Wow. Thank you.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to rise up against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, to end them.
I actually memorized that, and I still could say it too. Oh, thank you so much for
Have you memorized this from Bill? Bill is a friend of Kathy's and mine. We're
Bill
talking about
Spady?
No, Bill Shakespeare.
Oh, Bill William.
I call him Bill. We're close. It's Bill who wrote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy."
Yes. Oh, okay. So yeah, and so I want everyone to know about the book. I want everyone to get the book. I want everyone to actually reread all of the Conversation with God books. And I want them to know, Neale, where's the best way for them to get in contact with you or to get involved in what
they can get to my Facebook page. I'm on Facebook. Just go to Facebook/Neale Donald Walsch.
Okay.
Or they can go to cwgconnect.com.
Okay.
Which is a place to stay connected with the message in a very real, ongoing, day-to-day way.
Wonderful. And want to thank you for all of your work and your international presence. your work has created a unifying principle for so many. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to see you again.
Well, you're being very kind to me, Kathy. Thank you for those words. I hope I can live up to half of them and continue to offer people something of benefit. And I appreciate the opportunity to have shared these moments with you. Thank you for the work that you're doing as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, dear. Okay, we're going to sign off.